Berlin today. I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate you once again on becoming Prime Minister. Germany and the United Kingdom are good friends, close partners and trusted allies. The both of us will be working hard to ensure that this relationship will continue to thrive. Meine Damen und Herren,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extraordinarily pleased to welcome Prime Minister Keir Starmer so soon after taking office. Germany and the UK share long-standing and a trustful partnership, which is based on shared values and reliable friendship. We are going to foster and promote this cooperation for the benefit of our peoples, for the benefit of Europe and security and the transatlantic sphere. We want to continue to intensify these relations. We don't want to leave it at statements, but base our relations on an entirely new footing. In the coming months, we're going to work towards a treaty which reflects the whole spectrum of our relations. Such a treaty has not existed between Germany and the United Kingdom yet. We also want to deepen a cooperation between our two governments through government-to-government consultations, which we are going to have very soon. Already now, we're coordinating closely in our day-to-day work. We coordinate closely and based on the spirit of trust. All of this goes to show Germany and the UK are special partners indeed. Together, we want to strengthen the European pillar in NATO, and closer cooperation in the field of security will play an important role. We also dealt with the situation in Ukraine today. Germany and the UK stand firmly by Ukraine's side. I explicitly say this also against the backdrop of the fact that attempts were made to sow the seeds of doubt when it comes to this commitment. We will continue to lend financial, economic, political and military support as long as this is necessary. The budget, the draft budget, has earmarked €4 billion in bilateral aid for Ukraine. In addition, together with the G7 states, we provide a €50 billion loan to Ukraine in order to make sure that Ukraine has reliable financial support. And in order to do so, we also use windfall profits from immobilized Russian central banks' assets. We're deeply worried about the situation in the Middle East and the escalation in the region. The immense human suffering, which we're observing for months, is growing just as the risk of a regional conflagration. We call upon all parties involved to continue negotiations immediately, negotiations on a ceasefire and the liberation of hostages. The catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza and the lack of protection for civilians and humanitarian aid workers is something that deeply worries me. Israel needs to do more. We coordinate closely, not only in terms of security policy. It is also important to further develop relations between the European Union and the United Kingdom. I am happy about the announcement by Keir Starmer to seek a reset in the relations to the European Union. We want to take this hand which is reached out to us. The UK has always been an indispensable partner when it comes to solving the big issues affecting all of Europe, and nothing has changed after the UK left the European Union. With the withdrawal agreement, the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland, the comprehensive trade and cooperation agreement, and the Windsor framework, we have a reliable legal framework for our relations that needs to be fully implemented. One last point is important to me. The contacts between our societies, between Germans and people in the UK have declined massively after Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic. We want to change that because if you know each other well, you understand each other better. We share similar views on this, and this is why we want to intensify the exchanges between Germany and the UK. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to Berlin.
Thank you very much. Can I first express my sincere condolences for the shocking attack in Solingen last week? Our country knows what it's like to suffer such senseless and despicable acts, and our thoughts are with all the families affected by this terrible event. And Olaf, thank you. It's fantastic to be here with you in Berlin. Not, alas, my first visit here as Prime Minister. Football, as it turns out, decided to visit its second home in Spain this term when I was last here. But anyway, it's still an incredible experience and a showcase for the fantastic hospitality of this great nation. So thank you for hosting yet another episode in English footballing trauma. I've been through a lot. Anyway, I'm delighted to be back at this moment of opportunity for our two countries. Olaf, on every occasion that we've met, we've talked about our ambitions for the future, our values of security, prosperity and respect, and our shared determination to harness the power of government for the service of working people. And that is what we are doing today. A new UK-Germany treaty, a once-in-a-generation chance to deliver for working people in Britain and in Germany. A new agreement, a testament to the depth and potential of our relationship, with deeper links on science, technology, development, people, business, culture, a boost to our trading relations. Germany, of course, already the UK's second largest trading partner in the world, and through that, a chance to create jobs here and in the United Kingdom, and deliver that most precious of goods for both our countries, economic growth. Let me be clear, growth is the #1 mission of my government, and what we understand clearly is that building relationships with our partners here in Germany and across Europe is vital to achieving it. That is what our agreement today represents, the chance that we have. We will also deepen cooperation on shared social challenges, for example, on illegal immigration, because we cannot smash the smuggler gangs who perpetrate this vile trade without the help of our partners. And I'm really glad that we had substantive discussions today about how we tackle the smuggling gangs and agreed to develop a joint action plan to tackle illegal migration. We will also renew our commitment to the Calais Group, enhance our intelligence sharing on organised immigration crime, but also increase collaboration on tackling climate change, an important goal for the planet, of course, for greater energy security, but also for tackling the drivers of challenges like illegal migration at source. And finally, at the heart of this treaty will be a new defence agreement, an agreement that builds upon our already formidable defence cooperation, but which expands that relationship to face the threats of a volatile world together. That, of course, means a shared resolve to stand up for the security of our people and the wider European continent. And that begins with our unyielding support for Ukraine. And we discussed that in some detail today. Because as Europe's largest contributors to Ukraine's war efforts, and as the nations with the highest defence expenditure among the European countries in NATO, we know only too well the debt we owe to the Ukrainian people, who fight not just to defend themselves, but for the people and all the people across Europe. So today, we affirmed our commitment to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. We also share a common commitment to resolve the crisis in the Middle East, as you've just referenced. And we agree on Israel's right to self-defense in compliance with international humanitarian law, the need for de-escalation across the region and for restraint and caution to be exercised, unfettered humanitarian access into Gaza, agreement to a ceasefire and release of all hostages, and the importance of working together towards a political solution based on the creation of a Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel. The only way to provide long-term peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. Now that, of course, is not an easy goal, but it is one that we are committed to pursuing together because, as today shows, Britain can advance its interests much more effectively when friends and partners. This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. We invest billions in each other's countries. Thousands and thousands of jobs are supported through trade. And every year, millions of people travel between our two countries, exchanging ideas, collaborating, creating, and connecting. But today, we build on that. A bright new future for UK-German relations. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage. Thank you so much for hosting us here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As usual, we have the drill for questions, two questions each side. The first question goes to Beth Rigby from Sky News.
Thank you, Beth Rigby, Sky News. Prime Minister, PM after PM has come to Berlin asking for a better deal, better trade deal, only to fail. You've ruled out rejoining the EU, the single market or customs union, but you know you'll have to make concessions for a better deal. Do you acknowledge that? And specifically, will you allow freedom of movement for young Germans? And Chancellor, our new Prime Minister is talking about a once-in-a-generation reset between UK and Europe. But does Berlin and your partners in Brussels have real appetite for the reset the Prime Minister is pledging? Can the UK really expect to cherry-pick better trade terms outside of the European Union? And is youth mobility something that might materially shift the dial for you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Obviously, today is predominantly about the bilateral treaty that we will agree at pace, and we've talked about the substance of that today. And that will be ambitious, it will be wide-ranging, covering trade, the economy, defence, and many other issues. And the fact that we've agreed the substance, the ambition, and the pace of it today, I think, is very significant for both the UK and for Germany. And that's why I say it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take something of that order forward for both of our countries. When it comes to the wider reset with Europe, I'm absolutely clear that we do want a reset. I've been able to repeat that here today, a reset with Europe, a reset with the EU. That does not mean reversing Brexit or re-entering the single market or the customs union, but it does mean a closer relationship on a number of fronts, including the economy, including defence, including exchanges. But we do not have plans for the youth mobility scheme, but we do have plans for a closer relationship between us and the EU as part of that wide set. So the position today is exactly as it was before the election, but what we've been able to do today is to move that forward with the bilateral treaty agreement and to reiterate our desire to reset the relationships with the EU. Thank you.
I don't have much to add. From my point of view, we want to create good relations between the UK and the European Union. It can become better day by day, and we all share an interest. The historic decision in Germany was taken. Great Britain, the UK, has left the European Union, but we're friends. We live on the same continent, and from our point of view, from our perspective, and we are of the opinion that there is reason to do everything in our power to improve relations between our both countries, but also the UK and the European Union.
Herr Premierminister, Herr Bundeskanzler, Sie haben beide eben die Hilfe für die Ukraine noch mal beteuert. Es gibt aber Zweifel, ob dieses Finanzinstrument von G7 und der EU rechtzeitig für die Ukraine zur Verfügung steht, um Waffen zu kaufen. Deswegen ganz konkret die Frage an Sie beide. Werden diese Windfall Profits aus den Frozen Russian Assets noch in diesem Jahr genutzt werden können, um der Ukraine einen Kredit über 50 Milliarden Dollar zu geben? Und wie groß ist eigentlich der Anteil des Kredits, den Großbritannien und auch Deutschland zusteuern? And Prime Minister, second question for you. Germany will deploy American mid-range weapons from 2026 onwards, till Germany, France and Britain have developed own capacities in this field. How do you bridge the capability gap in this field, also with American weapons? Thank you.
I will start. Okay. Es ist so, dass wir uns beim G7
Well, in Apulia at the G7, we agreed on lending big support to Ukraine with a loan to the tune of 50 billion euro, with windfall profits of the immobilized Russian central bank's assets. And this is a major effort, but it is something that is possible, and we want to swiftly promote this. We're intensively working on technical preconditions. I talked to the president of the European Commission as far as Europe's share, Germany's share is concerned, and how we're going to do it. We have far advanced. We coordinate closely with our American friends so that it fits well within their rules and regulations, and the same holds true for involving all those who want to lend a contribution as part of G7, the UK, Canada, and Japan. And of course, we are happy if others chip in and join. These are the developments, and in this sense, in this regard, we're at work, and we hope that we have the technical preconditions ready for it to happen.
Very much. In terms of the wider question about capability, obviously the UK, along with Germany, along with key allies, does already provide support and weaponry, particularly in relation to the conflict in Ukraine, which is where we've been working so closely together. So far as the UK is concerned, there's been no change of position, no new decisions made in relation to capability. And the contribution we make is in accordance and consistent with the contribution that was made before the election, because there's been a high degree of consensus, political consensus, in the UK in relation to that. As you would expect, Ukraine was a part of our discussion here this morning as we looked at the challenges ahead, and our resolve is, as ever, to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine to provide the support that it needs for as long as it needs. Thank you. Well, look, I mean, I'm not sure there's much I can add to what the Chancellor already said.
Thank you, Chris McKeon, Press Association. Following on the subject of Ukraine and weapons and long-range weapons, firstly, Prime Minister, is it the case that it is American objections that are preventing the use of Storm Shadow missiles to target, to hit targets in Russia? And what discussions have you had with the Chancellor on lifting restrictions on the use of weapons in Russia? And Chancellor, is now the time to consider lifting restrictions on the use of German-supplied weapons against Russian targets, particularly supplying F-16 jets and Taurus missiles?
Let me just address that. Obviously, and as you know, we have been providing support and weaponry to Ukraine consistent with the approach of other key allies, including Germany. We supported the approach and the framework put forward by the previous government in the United Kingdom when we were in opposition, and we are acting consistently with that in government, and that's why I'm very clear that no new or different decisions have been made. I'm not going to get into tactical questions about the use of weapons for very obvious reasons, but no new decisions have been taken. But Ukraine is, of course, a constant theme of discussion between NATO allies, and we all recognise the need to stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. And we've renewed that commitment here this morning.
Deutschland ist
Germany is one of the very large supporters of Ukraine in Europe. Within Europe, we are the largest contributor. We're going to continue this support, and this support is bolstered and added by the 50 billion loan that we prepared as G7, and we're intensively working on realizing this. As far as weapon supply is concerned, there are no new decisions from Germany.
Vielen Dank, Herr Premierminister.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. The knife-stabbing attacks in Solingen have led to a debate in Germany as to how to limit irregular migration. You just announced that there will be a new action plan between the UK and Germany on this topic. Which tangible measures are contained in this action plan? And Prime Minister, what are the recommendations to the Chancellor based on your own experiences in dealing with knife-stabbing attacks in Solingen? And Mr. Chancellor, the opposition leader Friedrich Merz offered to support laws, draft bills without the support of your coalition partners. This would infringe upon the coalition treaty. Are you categorically against this because of that reason?
zunächst mal, wir haben uns
First of all, yes, we intensively exchanged views on the terrible attack of Solingen, and I'm very grateful for the condolences and the solidarity expressed by the Prime Minister in our personal meeting, and for reiterating his condolences here. It is terrible, terrible indeed what happened there, and I'm going to continue, and I will not forget meeting those who were there, who are suffering and going through difficult emotions, because it was a terrible situation for the people fighting for their lives, and we know 3 people have lost their lives in this terrible attack. This terrible murderous attack cost people's lives, and further victims continue to be hospitalized. We mourn the victim, and we wish a speedy and comprehensive recovery to those who have been injured. We can't go back to daily business after this attack. We cannot do that. We will not do that. We will draw the necessary lessons. It is clear we are continuing our efforts to contain irregular migration into Germany. As far as we know, the perpetrator of Solingen was supposed to have left Germany already. He was supposed to be deported to Bulgaria. We are going to closely investigate why this did not happen, why authorities did not deport him, and this needs to change so that such terrible attacks don't happen again. In order to contain irregular migration, the government, in cooperation with the federal states, and the Bundesrat and the Bundestag, has passed measures in the past 12 months, a law on deportation, which has removed legal and bureaucratic obstacles that assists authorities in deporting perpetrators. The police now has more authorities to search and look for people who are to be deported, and persons can be detained longer, and asylum seekers receive a reduced amount of support. At the same time, we massively expanded controls and border checks, and we will continue to do so as long as it is possible. All of these decisions show effects. The number of those who come to Germany illegally have reduced. And in comparison to 2021, the number of people deported has increased by 60%. And yet the numbers are not the way the citizens expect them to be and the way I hope them to be. This is why the federal government is going to continue its efforts to contain and limit irregular migration further. We are going to discuss new and coordinate new measures, a tightening of weapons laws, measures against violent Islamism, and further measures in order to make repatriation easier. It is a good signal when the largest opposition party signals its cooperation and the willingness to cooperate, and we welcome this willingness to cooperate with us. The federal government is going to swiftly take the necessary decisions with representatives of the federal states and the CDU-CSU party, and also talk about proposals that are made. The Federal Minister of Interior is going to invite swiftly chairmen of the prime ministers' conferences of the federal states and representatives of the respective ministries for meetings on this matter. The aim of this joint effort is clear. We want to further reduce irregular migration to Germany. At the same time, we all know Germany needs and relies on regular immigration. 20 million of citizens with migrant background lend a contribution to economic prosperity. They're well integrated as neighbors, as classmates. They pay taxes. It's a success story, and we can be proud of this. With modernizing the laws on immigration and nationality, the federal government has made a big effort. The state has to contain irregular immigration so as to not to overburden the country. This can and must succeed without questioning our basic law and also international treaties. We owe this to the victims of Solingen.
In relation to the terrible attacks here in Germany, I just reiterate our thoughts are with all of the victims and their families in what is a very difficult set of circumstances. On the wider question of irregular migration and the particular issue that we have in the UK of small boats crossing the channel, I have long said before the election that I thought the Rwanda scheme was a gimmick, which is why we stood it down immediately. But nonetheless, it is very important that we take back control of our borders. I have long been convinced that the best way, the most effective way to do that is to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people in dangerous situations across Europe and across the Channel. And I said before the election that I would invest political capital in making sure we could work more effectively with our partners in taking down those gangs. And that's why I'm very pleased today that we've had a substantive discussion, agreed to a joint action plan, and that will, as you would expect, deal with issues like data sharing, intelligence sharing, what we can do on joint operations, because that is the way to take effective action in relation to the vile trade that sits beneath irregular migration across Europe, and in particular sits beneath the vile trade of putting people into small boats across the Channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. This concludes our press conference.
A new spirit of cooperation, hoping to be in place by the end of the year. That press conference with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Of course, ahead of the conference, Sir Keir Starmer said that this was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reset the relationship with Europe within the parameters of Brexit, of course. He opened with condolences for the shocking attack, the stabbing attack, of course, in Solingen. And then managed a joke where he thanked Germany for hosting yet another episode in English footballing trauma, which made the audience laugh, proving he can do comedy sometimes. But then he went down to the very serious business of the relationship with Germany. Darren McCaffrey joins me from our studio in Westminster, listening in on all of that, Darren. A number of key points that both Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Keir Starmer reflected on, notably the new relationship and what that might entail, and their great ambitions, as they called it, for working people in Britain and Germany.
Yeah, indeed, and it was pretty wide-ranging in the sense it talked about that reset. Clearly, there was an awful lot of focus on Ukraine and the weapons that both Germany and the UK are supplying to Ukraine, and then at the end there on clearly migration. I think what was most interesting, though, was actually the lack of detail, really. Yes, it was pretty bold in terms of what they want to set out to achieve, but actually no tangible details on how that is going to happen. It was interesting that Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, talked about how the hand had been reached out in terms of this reset to the EU, and it's one that they're willing to grasp, i.e. that this is reciprocal, that this is not just Keir Starmer going there saying, can we kind of be better friends, that Germany are keen for that too. But you're right in saying that Keir Starmer reiterated that this is not meant to be a reversal of Brexit. It is meant to be closer cooperation. But when Beth Rigby, our political editor who's in Berlin, specifically talked about what the UK might be willing to concede to form better relationships with both Berlin and Brussels, Keir Starmer did deliberately rule out this idea that you could have youth mobility between the European Union and the UK, saying there were no plans for that. Now, we believe that this deal that the Prime Minister now says he wants to see by the end of the year is going to try to ease, if you like, some of the niggly things around trades to try and help better German and British companies invest in each other's countries. And clearly, you know, what Olaf Scholz talked about there, didn't he? The pillar of European security inside NATO, so closer defence cooperation. But as I said, beyond those kind of big themes, we didn't get any specific details about what is going to be worked out, but maybe that's what's going to happen actually in the months ahead. But this is a very deliberate attempt by Keir Starmer. He's going to do this later on in France tomorrow as well, to, as he says, reset this relationship, to try and rebuild bridges, at least in terms of the language, between London and different European capitals, and also at the same time try and do these deals outside of the EU with individual countries. At the end of the day, Germany is the second largest trading partner for the UK. And in this effort, and he noted this at the start, to try and boost growth, he said it was his government's #1 mission. And in the end, what he's prepared to do is to go to European capitals to try and strike slightly better trade deals with them in order to get growth back home here in the UK.
Darren, it'll be interesting to see the response to this from perhaps the Conservatives and, of course, Brexiteers in particular.
Yeah, indeed. I think, first of all, the response from Brussels will also be fascinating. Keir Starmer is due to meet with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, in the next couple of weeks as well. There is a problem in some regards by trying to do bilateral deals when the main trading relationship between the UK is with the EU. But yes, the response of Conservatives will also be interesting.
Darren, thank you. OK, well, let's go back live to Berlin now, and our political editor, Beth Rigby, who asked that question of Keir Starmer. Beth, what did you make of that news conference with Olaf Scholz and Keir Starmer there?
Well, this is the fifth time that those two leaders have met each other since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. And you can see that they have a good relationship, that they are both enthusiastic about deepening bilateral ties between the UK and Germany. On the agenda today is a bilateral treaty. The UK signed something similar with Germany back in 2010. At the time, David Cameron was negotiating that, and that was when the UK was within the European Union, and it was about strengthening defence and security ties. So Keir Starmer and Chancellor Scholz want to drum up a new treaty between our two countries. We haven't had one before, and you heard in that press conference the way in which they talked about the contours of that, a lot around defence, a lot of conversations around Ukraine and NATO and supporting Europe's borders, and then coming on to borders in terms of security too. The issue of illegal migration and how Europe can exchange information and work on that. But at the heart of it too, for Keir Starmer certainly, is the idea of strengthening trade ties, because we know that one of his big agendas is to get the UK to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. But there are obvious issues around this. Look, there are warm words. You heard Chancellor Scholz in that press conference say that the UK had offered out its hand for this reset, and the European community wanted to take that hand. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts, there are legal frameworks now that the UK has left the European Union, has left the single market, has left the custom union, which limits what sort of trade arrangements that there could be had. And certainly Germany is not going to negotiate bilateral trade deals with the UK. That has to be done on an EU-wide basis. So I think the big question here is that for all the warm words, in practical terms, how does Keir Starmer really shift the dial? And one of the questions is whether or not the UK might allow youth mobility. You heard Chancellor Scholz in that press conference talk about Brexit and the way in which it had lessened cultural communications between our two peoples. And he talked a lot about how he wanted to improve that. This is all about youth mobility and wanting to have schemes in which young German people, be it through Erasmus, university scheme or visas, come and live and work and study in the UK and vice versa. Chancellor Scholz talked about how he wanted to improve those connections. I asked Keir Starmer specifically whether this would be a concession he would be willing to make. He just simply said no plans for youth mobility. So I think, yes, the mood music is positive, but again, in terms of what it actually means in nuts and bolts and how it might improve the actual trading between Germany and the UK, it's still very, very scant on detail. And Keir Starmer needs that, because he needs to improve trade in Europe in order to help grow the UK economy.
Yeah, a bit of watch this space. Beth Rigby live from Berlin. Thanks very much indeed. Okay, on to the day's other